When thinking about the Iconclass system in terms of sustainability, it dawned on me to what extent the story of Iconclass is a story of survival. First of all, I realized that Henri van der Waal's work on iconology and on the grouping of images on the basis of their content and aspects of their iconography survived the Second World War. Within 6 months after he defended his PhD thesis, which was subtitled An Iconological Study, van der Waal lost his position at Leiden University by order of the German authorities because of his Jewish roots. And from 1943 until the end of the war, he was imprisoned. He survived, but with his health seriously weakened. Within a year after the liberation of the Netherlands, he was appointed professor of art history and director of Leiden University's important collection of prints and drawings. In his inaugural lecture of March 1946, he emphasized the importance of iconographic grouping for art historical research. 2 years later, he had begun to organize the collection of what he said is the print room in such a way that the material will also be able to give an answer to iconographic questions, as he wrote that in 1949 to his colleague Erwin Panofsky, whom he had visited in Princeton the year before. From the early 1950s onwards, Iconclass took shape, and it survived a whole series of transformations. It started as a card file and then was transformed into elaborate manuscript folders in the 1950s, and a first abridged edition was published in 1968. And from 72 to 1985, the full system was published in 17 volumes. 7 system volumes, 7 bibliography volumes, and 3 volumes of an alphabetic index. It also survived being moved from Leiden, where it originated and was completed, to Utrecht University, where it was transformed from a printed to a digital publication. And several editions were created, from an unpublished browser version on diskette to the first published electronic variant on CD-ROM. Remember that. From 1999 onwards, A10 Posthumous produced 3 web versions, most recently the present illustrated edition, which we made available in 2021. But the power of the idea and the enormous investment of Van der Waal and his staff and students, combined with the computerization of the system in Utrecht, resulted in a classification that was accepted as an international standard by dozens of institutions and by a small army of researchers. Now, for those of you who I'm sure are amongst them, who have not yet made its acquaintance, a very short tour d'horizon may be useful. The scope of Iconclass is very wide, both geographically and chronologically, as you can see here. Its terms offer descriptors for a very wide range of concepts, from very abstract ideas to very concrete actions and objects. And it contains a rich set of ready-made descriptors for biblical and classical stories as well. It can deal with images produced by the visual arts, but also with news photographs with similar subject matter. And organizing information in sometimes unexpected juxtapositions, it helps in recording what Van der Waal called the memory of mankind, which is closely related to the A.B. Warburg concept of sociale Gedächtnis. Now, some practical questions. Where can I find Iconclass? Well, you can find it on the URL, which is shown here. And how does it work? Well, very, very briefly, it's a classification, and you can browse the concept tree on the site. You can do word searches to find concept and examples of illustrations that have been already dealt with Iconclass. You can combine word searches, keyword searches with notations to pinpoint very precisely what you're looking for in the samples. And you can use, quite recently, and we're experimenting with this, a visual pattern similarity search to get suggestions for tags from the system itself. Now, against the background of the developments in artificial intelligence, it's extremely important that Iconclass, which is also used to produce training sets for machine learning, is a completely open standard. Its raw data and the source code of the browser are both deposited in GitHub, which you can see here. However, it is not only open, it can also be used free of charge. And that has been the case ever since Etienne and I put it on the web. So as there is no viable business model for a free and open access instrument that first of all serves the heritage world and the humanities, the first strategy to enhance its sustainability is to make sure that the system is adaptable. And that can mean a few different things. First of all, it is very important that we're able to modernize the vocabulary. As you can see in this example, terminology that was acceptable in the 1970s when Iconclass was originally published is no longer acceptable in 2023. There's no way you can still use a word like Red Indians, which was used in the original edition. So that needs to be adapted to what's acceptable today. Of course, new objects and new ideas come to life, which are not, previewed in a classification that started in the 1950s and 60s, like these. And so they need to be added to the system as well. And they also need to be added even if they are offensive or sensitive material, because images show that material. So we need our classification to be able to cope with that. And transparency, too, is a reason why the system is deposited in an open repository. So everyone who's interested can join the editorial debate about new concepts. A second part of the strategy is to attempt to give the classification a recognizable face, so to speak, for the benefit of a more uniform user experience. And here are a few examples of what's basically the same piece of software with slightly different style sheets, but the same functionality. It's browsable, thumbnail galleries, browsable and searchable by subject matter in a number of projects. That's only possible, of course, to a certain extent, as institutions may have their own ideas or are dependent on external software developers. So different ideas for the same classification with the different functionalities. For instance, this retro search website where you can search stained glass collections in a slightly different way. Another example is the Rijksmuseum's, the Dutch Rijksmuseum's website, which does use Iconclass, but slightly hides it, so to speak, behind the screens. A third strategy to make the system more durable is to fill it with richer content and embed it in a richer and a denser net of relations. One of the relationships we're developing at the moment is with Wikidata. Many concepts in Wikidata relate and point back to the Iconclass browser. Another strategy to enrich it is by including bibliographic references. Several thousands of those have been added or are on their way to be added to the Iconclass system, including a link to the WorldCat, OCLC's WorldCat. Not just the bibliographical references, but also, which is of course now much easier than it was and much more conceivable than it was 20 years ago, links to full text copies of digital books and articles mentioned in the bibliography, but now available in many cases in full text. Adding a layer of Iconclass information to an older resource like the Lexicon des christlichen Iconographies also enriches the possibilities for search. So summarizing a little bit, conditions of sustainability for Iconclass that I've listed so far are the adaptability of its definitions, its uniform user experience, openness of data and software, richer connections and richer content and functionality. But eventually, at the end of the day, sustainability rests on use, on participation, and by the community of users. So what the Henri van der Waal Foundation is looking for is two parts. Some funding, which is eventually inevitable. You need some funding. And secondly, the participation of the community of users. And for that reason, we started to build a consortium and are now gathering the support of 3 groups of colleagues. The study of image content, especially with the help of modern technology and AI, as is the main objective of the Henri van der Waal Foundation, we are bringing together a group of scholars with roots in the humanities, heritage institutions, and computer science. Some of them have been active users of Iconclass, and others have experience with other thesauri and ontologies. And for the continued development of the content of Iconclass, we are building a team of what we call editorial consultants, with experienced users, but also researchers who are new to Iconclass and have fresh ideas about its strengths and weaknesses. And the third group consists of technical sparring partners, software developers mainly, with ideas about AI and pattern recognition, but who are also aware of the special difficulties computer applications in the humanities have to wrestle with. Whether Iconclass will yet again survive this transformation remains to be seen, but its history, however, suggests that it will. Thank you.